Gonna go live. Boom. All right. Doot. We've got 5 viewers already, just so everybody knows. All right, we are live. Welcome to the first. Oh, and of course, it's showing from like minutes ago. That's always fantastic. Welcome to the first. Right. Welcome to the first Everything Immersive live stream. I'm Noah Nelson. I am the founder of NoPro, also the host of our podcast. All of this is brand new because we're just figuring out the way the software works. So you guys got a little preview of what we were going to be talking about. Joining us today is a whole bunch of us. Let's flip over. Boom. Up in your upper left-hand corner, you have Anthony Robinson of NoPro. Anthony, go ahead and wave.
Hello,
in
how you guys
the lower right-hand corner, we have Catherine Yu of NoPro.
Hello.
And in your upper right corner, some of the other co-stakeholders in Everything Immersive from Room Escape artists, Lisa and David Spira. Hey, y'all.
Howdy.
All right. And this is the first time we've all done this together in this way. Yay. This is coming to you thanks to the magic of Skype. That's why everything's watermarked, and the free OBS software. So if there happens to be any sort of weirdness, particularly with the audio track on my end, please let me know. We'll find out probably about a minute and a half after you tell us, because that's what the sync rate on the chat room is. So again, if you're wondering why we're not responding directly to your chat, and we will in fact swing around to the chat room at certain points, it's because the delay is about a minute. You're seeing the past when you see us. I have all the video up. It looks very strange. Just a couple of quick hits on the news before we dive in. Everyone's brought something to the deck today. And I just want people to know 2 things for starters. One, Blackout, the immersive haunted house. Blackout, the legendary, hitting their 10th anniversary. They put a Kickstarter up today. They were looking to raise $16,000, and they fully funded today. So they probably got some stretch goals going on, but once again, a reminder that crowdfunding is not dead. You just gotta get it out there in the right way. You gotta have a huge fan base who are super excited to see you do some new work, which never hurts. Speaking of money and things, we put up our auction with the College of Extraordinary Experiences. You can find that on the website. The college was nice enough to reach out. Klaus Rosted reached out last week and said, hey, we could maybe help you guys out while you're in this pinch. We could put a couple of tickets up for auction. The tickets are usually at like $7,000 a piece. We've got 2 tickets. The auction reserve is at $5,000. It's a ridiculously huge amount of money. I couldn't do it, but in case you're out there and you've ever wanted to go to an experience design conference in a castle in Poland, well, we've got a deal for you. And now, with all that, we're going to get into the meat of the show, where we take a look at some of the stuff that's been going on in the past week and examine it from a couple of different angles. Cool. Not Gordian says, echo for off feeds, but Noah, so I suspect it might be on that end. So we'll keep on moving and see what happens here. I might tweak a few things and see. Catherine, I want to start with you. You had the review this week. You're newly arrived in Los Angeles, and so we sent you straight away to a show.
Really far away from downtown where I live.
Away, like there's this, did you lift on the way back home, by the way? We haven't gone into
that. Yeah, but on the way there, I took the bus to the yellow train to the lift.
So, experiencing Los Angeles transit, welcome to LA, throwing you in the deep end. You went and saw the Johnny Cycle by the Speakeasy Society, and I wanted to talk to you about this review that we just posted up today. You can find it on the site. It's on the front page right now. I'll drop a link in the chat. Because you had some interesting stuff to say about the technique they have of Yusei, which you hadn't encountered before. So walk us through that a little bit, and then maybe we can kind of break it down, because I know Anthony's seen some of their stuff, and I wonder if, and I'm sure David and Lisa will have a take on the injunctions here.
Right. So when we're talking about experiences. There's a couple different ways that you can play, which is not necessarily giving them a specific character like you might in a LARP, right? So a lot of times what I've encountered is the audience essentially playing a version of themselves or themselves in a fictionalized kind of like a loosely defined loop. And what Speakeasy Society does, at least in the Johnny cycle, was really different. So I was there on press preview night, and essentially so I was there on press preview night in the room who was show just not in the cast referred to as Johnny do this, Johnny do that, and then that's like one piece of gear. The other piece was you say technique. So in order to make participants feel like they're part of the story, they're part of the narrative, the actor telling what to say. So you might be having a conversation with his 19-year-old friend, and five of you, and all of you are Johnny, and there's another character in the room who wasn't there when the actual real-life events happened, but that other character kind of inserts himself into this conversation you're having with say, Kareem and John's girlfriend, and five of you, the audience, who are all Johnny, and each person is directed to say a line. And it's not necessarily figurative, like, don't say you'll never leave, or, tell me you love me. It's, now you say, I love you. Now you say, I'll never leave. And then she'll say, oh, but you have to go to war. Okay, point to a third audience member. Now you say this. Now you say that. You say that. And it's a really interesting technique, and I don't know if that technique in and of itself has design flaws, but what I found was problematic was the fact that cast as there's just one figure, there's just one character who's in the center of the story, and the frame around the also in that character's mind. So you're the audience. You're coming in without a lot of information. You're just kind of like responding the moment, you're following as direction. You're also the main character at the same time. So why wouldn't you know, for example, your own memories? Very kind of complicated design, multifaceted, lots and lots.
Who is Johnny? Just for the context.
So the show is called the Johnny Cycle, and it's essentially the main character of the novel Johnny Got His Gun, written by Dalton Trumbo, but also taking the memory of Trumbo and information about warfare. So you've got like 2019, and then you've got like 60s communist witch hunt, and then you've got actual, and they're all part of Johnny's inner mind, like his world. Like you're all Johnny. I don't know. There's 20 or 30 people that Johnny knew. Oh, by the way, Johnny's not real. And then the person who made up Johnny, Dalton Trumbo, is also there with his wife, his daughter, and his friend, and Congress. Somehow some of the characters. You look a little overwhelmed, David.
Sounds confusing.
It sounds a lot.
In the experience.
It wasn't that using confusing maybe the wrong word. I think they pull the rug out under you really quickly in the first couple of scenes, and so you never find that resting spot, and at least my interpretation is meant to echo some of the blurring that happened within the novel itself. Johnny, because Johnny has lost his arms, lost his legs, lost his mouth, lost his ears, and lost his eyes. So he's a prisoner in his own body. So the novel reflects on his life experience and what's happened to him.
So this is the same dude from the Metallica song One.
It's been when the novel first came out, it won a lot of awards, and it's the style very like written in feels very stream of consciousness, very stream of there's a lot of the man was not a fan of using commas, so it's really just kind of like everything that Johnny's thinking about in the order that he's thinking of with no filter. And then you as the audience, it kind of makes like a little bit of internal sense that things are surreal and weird, and then comes up to you and says, "I'm dead."
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, amalgam of this show, the three previous shows of Johnny's cycle. So it was actually originally broken up into three different shows, completely different shows, and they put them all together one night. They for one thing, that's my understanding of what the show is. I got to see the very first one in World War I, where you kind of dealing with him and his girlfriend. In fact, that was the one that Noah and I ended up going to completely by accident to the same show, if I recall correctly. Like for me, that was a neat experience because it was more of a experience as opposed to something borderline LARP. A lot of, in my experience, a lot of the newer shows are very much coming more from almost a LARP standpoint of making you a character specifically with the background, with like a way of knowing what the information is and feeding that to you. And this was neat because it way that for me it's like you didn't have to have the knowledge, you didn't have to have the context, and you kind of learned it through the course of the play. And it's neat, kind of a prompting thing. It's like they're because of the way they do it, it's a step further than even things. Point Break Live, where it's with that show, it's prompt you, they're holding the cue cards, but what makes this one a real immersive experience is because it really does put you in the middle. It puts you in the middle of it. So like that particular situation with his girlfriend on their last night in town, and we did it in such a way. When we did it, it was like tell him that I really love him very deeply, and so it turned into his game telephone to be like well, I really love you, I really love you a lot, and it made it its own beast because they didn't tell us to see exactly the way that they were doing it, so we got to the audience got to get the world, if that makes sense.
They were following directions, but it was in their own words.
Yeah.
So I think it might have just been like the scale of things, because it's such a big show now that we were like, we got to repeat it exactly because we got to move on. We got to like, you're holding up the show.
So Noah, which finger?
I'm just saying, I'll put on the black guy. It's all good.
The group I was with, and chatting with Matthew from the Speakeasy later. The audience when they're in the face as a whole.
All right. Yeah. So, literally and figuratively, definitely haven't encountered that. How many people in the audience would realize that if they're told, "Tell them I love you," that they can play with that?
It's funny. The first time I encountered it, they make direct eye contact, and I think it can be harder in the group scenes when there's a sequence where they're separated from you physically and they're pointing at you, and so it can kind of be unclear. Like, I don't know who they're pointing at, but 90% of the time it's, now you say, I don't want to leave, right? That's what winds up happening. And then you say, because it's like, oh, I say that, right? It's fairly obvious. I mean, Anthony, you've encountered this.
Anthony, you're on mute.
It helps. Okay, there we go. I know I've encountered it before. I mean, it's that technique. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head a couple that have done that, where they literally put the words in your mouth. It's far more for people who are coming, I think, more from either a theater or a film background. You get a lot more LARPers on the East Coast, and so from what I've seen, at least from what I've seen out there, you get a lot more people who are coming from both a theater background, but with LARP experience. So they build those shows that put you in, correct me if I'm mistaken, but it feels a lot more like they build it where they put you in explicitly. Here's more. It's almost like it's directing challenge. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you. I have my feed you your lines one at a time and kind of direct you to say it. But even in those experiences, yeah, it has been a couple of them where if the people didn't act fast enough, they turn the next person down. Okay, well, you say it. I mean, like even going back to that night, there was a scene where it was Johnny talking to his mom on his right before he left, and the guy or the lady who was really super shy, and she's like, she kind of was looking for a minute because it kind of hung the show, and it worked really well. I think the biggest thing for that type of show is you gotta, you as an willing to just jump in with both feet.
Yeah. So for me, and Catherine can attest to this, I am the type of person who take my role in an experience and run with it, often to unexpected places. But I'm told, or I'm not supposed to speak, I turn that off. because at that point the indication that I get is that the show is it's not about me. I'm not a critical character in this. I am more of a passive observer who, at that point, my reaction is to be more respectful, take a step back. And so that's the thing. And maybe it's the business who are willing to run with it. But like, if you put me in a very as a particular type of participant, and if you take the reins off and tell me, that you're this person, go do with that character what you will, then I will go and make a mess of things with that character.
Yeah, what I tend to find throughout like the Kansas collection stuff is you often have the folks who just give like a flat line reading, right? Someone will be like, now you say, where did you hide the supplies? And they just go, where did you hide the supplies? And then other people will be like, where did you hide the supplies? And just completely go all the way for it. And unfortunately, no one could hear everyone laugh, but they were laughing, everybody. This live stream thing is we'll probably have to pay money to get like a proper, we might throw down $15 for eCam or something. We're getting what we paid for, which was free. We're 20 minutes into this. Let's kind of move on. Cause I think there's good stuff here, but like the stream's already like broken beyond recompense. So I want to see if we can get some more content out of us. David, you guys have.
Well, we wanted to talk about an experience that we published today, and we want to lead with a question. Think of a murder mystery. What comes to mind?
Ooh, who's got something there? Anthony, you've done a few of these murders.
Yeah, it depends if you're doing a professional or not.
Let's assume semi-professional.
So it's not. Yes, semi-professional. I think dinner theater for most of those. It's like most of those. I think dinner theater with the guy walking around with the bad impersonation of a 1940s gumshoe. It's like narrating as they go, because those are like the shot rang out, and then the prop shot goes off. I have a mixed feeling about murder mysteries.
All right, Catherine, what about you? What murder mystery setups have you gotten involved in?
I just think cheesy, straight out of Central casting, like turn it up to 11 acting, and you're just like, all right, this was exhausting for everyone.
Oh God, exhausting often being the keyword. Okay, so clearly, since that was the setup, this must be going somewhere. What do you guys have here?
You or me?
You go ahead.
So we've gone and done two experiences with Ghost Ship Murder Mysteries, which is a company out of New York. It's two women who run it, and we did the first one a couple years ago. We just did a more recent one. First one we did was a Wild West, kind of a train heist type deal. This more recent one is what's called Space Smugglers. Yeah. Yep. And it was a hybrid of all of the sci-fi that we all know and love, of Firefly and Battlestar and Blade Runner and Star Wars. And they just kind of took inspiration from all of that and created a world out of it. And they show up at your house.
They bring it to you. So they come with all the props that they need. It's one actress who shows up to facilitate this. Everyone's been given their role ahead of time. The person who is the murderer knows that they're the murderer, which isn't always the case in my experience with these things. Wait,
hold on, roll back. And sometimes the murderer doesn't know they're the murderer in these things. Anthony,
often.
How would you even play the game if you don't know that you're the killer?
It's how most of them are, isn't it?
So it's most of them, I think, create this like plausible deniability under the assumption that everybody who's competent and will just like immediately spill that they're the murderer and game is over. So I think that that's where this comes from.
The guilty conscience theory of having fun. Yes, I know it well.
Yeah, yeah. Or just the zero trust model. And so anyway, they show up. In our case, Dylan shows up. She's a character in this world. She's playing a sort of Jane type, they're for public relations character. And what we're basically given this setup, and we all know our characters because we had them in advance, and we all costumed up to whatever degree we were comfortable. We had Mike Anderson from ARG Net come and join us. He showed up in a full-on like Obi-Wan robe.
It was amazing.
Setup. He looked wonderful, and basically
it plays out in 3 acts, where we're given a setup, and we go off and be our characters and talk with each other and conspire to do things and find things and steal things. And there's like light puzzling involved. Puzzles show up, they get found, there are some clues, but you can play it the way you think your character would solve it, would play it, whether they would do a puzzly thing or ignore that and do something else.
Yeah, there are mechanics. You can choose to use them or choose not to. And the real magic of it is that you can kind of participate at whatever level you're comfortable with. And Dylan is masterful at facilitating that. And we saw this because the first time we played, we were kind of dubious of the idea. And we brought together a mix of people where we knew that we brought in some people who were just straight up not going to buy into it.
Wait, why would you do that? Like, if they're not going to buy into it, like they're not going to have fun.
We wanted to see what would happen. They're not unfun people, and they weren't people who are going to flip the table over and be like, I'm not participating, but people who were just not comfortable playing a role, people who were not going to be able to say, I'm this character in this world, because that's the reality of a lot of this stuff, is that most people aren't playing within the immersive theater or escape room community where you have this whole huge group of people where everybody's into it.
Or in LA or New York where you have actors and LARPers and all these people.
We wanted to kind of simulate what happens if you invite your good friend and their significant other is kind of a dud. What is it like? And we didn't bring people who were like straight up going to just ruin it, but we brought people who weren't going to buy into it. And Dylan was amazing at integrating them, pulling them in, getting them involved to a level that they were comfortable with. And the second time around, the Space Smugglers game that we just did, we only invited people who were just going to go completely all in. And it was intensely fun.
But again, I mean, Dylan really worked her magic with, dropping in with some ideas, some light guidance, or something like much bigger, causing a scene. She
sparked some drama, with people who she knew were going to just run with it. And in the end, what we all kind of found was that our murderer got away. It was because we entirely outsmarted ourselves. And
the murderer was very pleased with themselves.
Yep, super pleased with themselves. And we all kind of walked away from this like it didn't matter whether we found this person, because we found out the murderer, because we all just had so much fun inhabiting these characters, inhabiting this world, playing around with these mechanics, and just doing something unusual.
Let me draw it back here for a second. You've put a lot of emphasis on Dylan's abilities. I'm wondering, so does that make this sort of like this is about this person and their execution of it, or is this about the design of the work itself? Because, a lot of the murder mystery in a box stuff you get, it's like there is no one facilitating. It's just you doing it. Or maybe there's some dinner theater, folks kind of doing stuff if you're going out to one. But I'm always interested in whether or not things can be replicable, because we've got replicable, whatever. Because we've got a lot of instances of, this is an amazing show over here, or this room is super cool, and only so many people can be pulsed through. So how do you what's your assessment here? Design, execution, a little bit of both. Could it scale?
It's both.
Both, yeah.
There are two women who run it. We have only played a game with Dylan, but my sense is that they both really have a grasp on what they're doing with this.
Do you think you could plug other people into the execution of it, right? Or does it really take like a special touch?
I think that they could with practice. I think that there's actually a role to be played by the facilitator, and it really helps make the show to have a facilitator, but it doesn't have to be this person. And I can imagine other people playing it differently and still succeeding.
Yeah. I think this is a lot like Strange Bird Immersive, where like they have cast other people into the key roles, and they've done so very carefully, and they've trained them properly, and it is replicatable with an intense amount of work on the part of the producer. I think that if Ghost Ship were to need to do that, I think that they could do it, but it would definitely take it that effort.
I will say that although when we stepped back and we thought about this piece that we'd experienced, we were like, wow, that facilitating role went really well. My first takeaway, and I think my memory of it, is like, that was a super fun murder mystery with my friends. Not like somebody else made this thing happen.
Yeah, because what she does is a very light touch. It's like sowing the seeds of the chaos, not actually being the chaos. And that's what makes it work, is that at the end of the day, she's just prompting. She's just getting the snowball started down the hill. And we're doing with it whatever we were going to do with it. I can imagine a scenario where there's a very reluctant overall group that she might have to get more hands-on with that. But from what we had seen, she was very artful in creating interactions between people and then letting the world that they've built and the story they've established. And it just worked. The Western one was tighter. It was a much more traditional story. It was easier to sink your teeth into. The space big. Skype is crashing on Anthony.
Don't worry, I've been monitoring. It's crashed out a couple times. He's come back. He's actually live right now, which might make a good time for us to check in with him. On what he's bringing to the table this week. And I honestly can't remember what we settled in on by the time we were done. What was going to be your topic, Anthony?
Let's see. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yeah, I've got you live, and I remember to unmute you myself.
So I want to talk a little bit about another review we actually just did. Kevin Gossett, who's our LA editor, Severance Theory, Welcome to Respite.
This wasn't even the option, so you pulled something out of your hat. So
yeah, it was there. It's really what I want to talk about is like one of the things he talks about in there for the show, which I really want to see. It's a 4-part series. It's the first part of this 4-part series, basically kind of with memory and trauma and kind of putting yourself in the shoes of somebody who's dissociated. So you dissociate yourself from yourself to put yourself in another character. But the big thing for me for that was he starts out that article basically talking about being in headspace to go see a show. And the thing is, like, that's actually been something that's been itching for me for a while. How do people get themselves in the right headspace to go see a show? And how do shows like this, which pulled him back into it when he wasn't ready for it and he was really tentative on stepping in, pulled him in? How do really good shows pull you in, as opposed to the ones that kind of like you kind of go through them and you don't feel them, you know? I think we've all been at least one or two that's like we got there, we were in a bad mood, and we were rushing to get there, or something. This thing that kind of, you know, transformative experience, and we get like, you know, for 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like you get that kind of thing where it's not anything it's not anything special. It's nothing that touches you in any way. And my question is, and throw it out to you guys, how do you guys, how do our viewers get into that right headspace to go and be open to a show? Especially with the way a lot of the shows, at least here in Los Angeles, I know on the East Coast, they're more open to be like and these are the things we're going to touch on, and what it is. And we're in LA, we're opening up about it, but we're still very kind of like, we play it close hands. Like it's going to be surprised when you get there. If you're not open for it and you get that wrong note from the beginning, will that show fall flat?
I feel like that's trying to like kind of. I feel like it's throwing two things together, and I kind of want us to stay in this lane of the personal headspace thing. So I've got a really particular strong take here, but I wonder out of David and Lisa or Catherine, does anyone else have something that springs to mind about your own relationship? Like what do you do when you're in that headspace for a show? It's going to be David and Lisa because I can tell.
So we don't go to as much immersive theater as you guys, and probably have a different answer for an escape room that we're not necessarily in the right headspace for. But for immersive theater, we dress differently, we behave differently, and we dress flashy. We are both free to flirt verbally or non-verbally with any character, and
we pretend to not know each other.
Right.
This is getting interesting.
Each other's existence in the show.
Oh, wow, this is good.
Yeah, because we found that and we saw this more observing other people, but like we saw that when other like, oh, is she having a good time or is he having a good time? You remove yourself.
And like, where is he? Like,
right.
And then you get that FOMO. Like, oh, is he having a different scene that I'm not having?
Yeah. So we just kind of give ourselves permission to go off and try and get the experience that each of us is going to have, and then afterwards, we really, we usually have very, very different experiences as a result of that. We also usually go a little bit buzzed.
That reminds me, the buzz thing's communication. It reminds me of how Zay approaches it, and when he would take people to Sleep No More, it was like intentionally like, no, you're going to go in differently than me. Like if we go in together, we're instantly going to split up, right? Just like kind of like aggressively making sure. And there's something to this issue, I think, of is a show designed for a social dynamic or not, right? Like, is it designed for a small group? Is it designed to be additive? And I think something like Sleep No More, for instance, it's a lot better if you do run off, so you can trade notes. And there are other experiences where things are probably better if you stick together. And I kind of feel like a lot of creators need to know which one are they making. Catherine, what about you?
Wow, I'm trying to think of a show that I went to where it was together, and I cannot think of one. If I'm with another writer, I might even get irritated at you following me, or can we please be on different tracks? I went back and like swapped my ticket at Ghostlight because it's gonna take me on the same track. I don't want this one. Can I have an even one instead? Like I asked the person in the check-in counter. And I think, at least coming from New York, the shows are 10, 15, 20, and they know someone's going to be late. So you hang around for half an hour mingling, and if you're lucky, there's wine or cookies, and then finally the last person comes in and goes, I'm so sorry, the MTA, and then we all go, ah.
Dastardly MTA. Here it's just like the 405, and we're all like, why did you take the 405? To roll it back to Anthony's original question, which is about getting into the headspace. The funny thing for me is I've found that the best experiences I have are usually when I'm in a foul mood, when everything's gone wrong that day, like nothing can go right, and I'm just kind of over reality. And I think there's something to Kevin's experience of respite when I was reading that review that kind of reminded me of that. Like, he just wasn't in the right brain space at all. And because there was such total commitment on the other side of the mirror, that they were so willing to, or so able to just create that other reality. They weren't asking him to do a bunch of heavy lifting. They were presenting him with that other reality. So it made it easier for him, I assume, to just let go. And I know, and then I'm going to open up your mic, Anthony, I know that's what it's been for me, is like, I show up and I'm like, today was garbage. And like, I don't want to see people pretend to be in Alice in Wonderland in an insane asylum. Like, why am I here? Like, what did Joss Whedon do to me this time? Why did he have to tweet this? What's going on? This is just going to be bad. Oh no, they're college students. Oh God, why am I here? And then she fell, and then we're here 5 years later doing this, right? Like, I was in the absolute worst headspace, but the commitment on the other side was so total that I couldn't help but let go of it. And that's what I'm always looking for, is like, is their commitment total? You know? Anyone? David, you're stroking your chin, I feel like. Oh, Anthony. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Anthony, go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, for me, it's I'm driving from like this, like, one of the usually to go to a show. It's like in central LA, like a downtown. Like, so I'm like waiting through traffic no matter which way I'm coming. It'd be a 12 midnight show. I'm still waiting. Doubt about traffic and getting there in time and missing it. So like my adrenaline's pulsing, and like I'm just like, I get going and I'm like mad at traffic, and I'm I got music blaring. I'm just like, I just gotta get there, gotta find parking, I'm gonna be late. So it kind of puts where the blood's flowing, you're pumping, you're like hustling down to find it, and you get there and like 4 other people. It's not you. But when you get there, it's like you're flushed. You've already made this expectation you're gonna have a horrible, like, I'm all the time because like I messed up, because I messed up, and then where it's like, here's this beautiful world, or another show that I did earlier this summer, I went to earlier. Here, wait, or and you kind of reset a little bit. So even if you're not in that headspace, you can get into it. I've had that with a couple of, even with escape rooms, where you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing here, and it's like this thin, I'm going to be with randos, and it's like, it's like as they're prepping, it's like, okay, we're going to do this, and don't touch this, and you get in the rules, and you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be cool. It is, it's not always alcohol, and it's not always, it's not always cookies and cream. But I think, if you have a good moment to take a breath and step into it, and if you have a cast and a show that is, that has the door wide open to this, this other reality for you, where that they see you coming into it going, and like they recognize, that you need a moment of transformation, because there's some shows where they vamp for a minute. There's some shows where they have really good onboarding. There's been a couple that I've hit now that had a really good onboarding moment, where they kind of let you, they get you in the mood before they push you into it. And then there are the other ones where they're like, they just drop you in, and it sounds like Kevin, the sounds from this show kind of just dropped you in, you hit the ground running, and because it was such a strong show, they got you, by the seat of the pants and carried you along. I really thankful for those shows that do that. I'm really thankful for the shows that reach out and pull you in and embrace you and get you running. Because beforehand, I always have time to, I don't always have time to get dressed right, because I like to do that when I can. So I fit into the world. I don't always have time to do it, because you're either rushing to pick up somebody else, you're rushing to get up the 405, like you say, or you're trying to find parking in the West LA.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's best when the shows assume that you're not going to be ready for them. that, you know, whatever's going on out there in the world is going to be a nightmare there. David's got something.
You first.
Oh, I was going to say that this reminds me of a conversation that we had with Kellyanne, who created Club Drosselmeyer, about how she had a Friday night show and a Sunday night show the very first year, and how completely dances were, because one audience was rushing from work and the other audience had been waiting all day and getting ready. And I think, I mean, I'm not in any shows, but I think that must be another interesting perspective on, is your whole audience coming in this sort of like, I'm rushing from work at the end of a week, or what types of different places are all these different people coming from?
And for me, what I've been thinking about as Anthony was speaking was, there was one time that I can think of that I really went into an immersive show totally in the wrong headspace. And I'm very good at just like, I'm really good at escapism. Like, no matter how bad my day is, I can just dive into something. And when we went to see Mortality Machine, I did that. And I dove in very comfortably. We were in the middle of buying our house and dealing with some really terrible lawyers. And one of the main characters in Mortality Machine is this lawyer who is just incredibly condescending and kind of like regularly poking at people. And very much like, and it was very honest, very in character. I lost it on this lawyer. And it was one of the best moments of the last year for me. Like, there was nothing I needed more in that moment than to tear this guy a new one. And he really went there with me, and he's shouting back at me. And apparently there was a rule that was stated in the beginning that you weren't supposed to shout, but neither one of us seemed to care. And afterwards, he and I talked about it, and he was having a blast. I was having a blast. And, but it was super in character, and just very much kind of to what Noah was saying of like, you know, when you're not in the right place, can almost be the right time.
Yeah, it's like why we go to this stuff, I sort of feel. And if they get you in that moment and they bring you across, you're there forever. There's another component to it. I'm gonna switch over to my pick of the week here to talk about, which is this week we had a review of Noir Town, which is Witness's new piece. And Catherine, you can correct me. It's Asia or Asia Gorowitz? Asia. Okay. Blake and I were going back and forth, and I said Asia, and he said Asia. So Blake, you're wrong. You did a me, and I didn't. How did that happen? Anyway, Asia. He's probably asleep right now, so it would be like, what are you doing? Asia came through with this fantastic review of Noir Town, which made me feel FOMO for a New York show for like the first time in a long time. It's got like one more instance at the Rave Theater Festival where it's actually running at the moment. And then maybe if we're lucky, it'll be remounted and we can come visit it. And it is a multi-track immersive where there's 3 detective stories going on at once, and they're happening in 3 different eras, and you can kind of follow whichever one you want, and you can kind of create your own mix. So Sleep No More style, it's like you can start following the detective in the 30s, and then if you want to slide over and start following the detective in the 60s, when a scene crosses over, you can do that. What's particularly cool sounding is because they're moving, and there's this quality in her review where I was realizing how important the kinesthetics of immersive are, right? Like there's a few things that feel almost like abandoned tracks in development trails in immersive. What we were talking about earlier with the you say, but also the fact that you are Johnny in the Johnny cycle. Like you are endowed with this very clear character, and every character in the piece has this specific emotional connection to you, right? And that's something that people haven't played around a lot with. And there's also people haven't played too much, in some degree because they don't have a lot of space, with that running around freedom that you get in Sleep No More. And there's something too that, at any moment. And of course, I'm seeing that the stream is having problems right now. So the whole thing froze on us when I got to that point. That's just great. I love technology. It's so wonderful. That being said, I'm going to forge on here because we're having a fun conversation. How, for all of you, how key is that, getting into it in the body, right? Like, do you miss that? Do you want that? YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. This is fantastic. I love the technology, but yeah, Catherine, you've got something I can tell.
Yeah, so this company is really interesting because a lot of them have worked at the Mandalay or at the McKittrick. And their first piece they did in this old colonial house, and it was very similar in that there were multiple storylines and it was sandbox. And I actually ended up seeing it the same night as Zay, and there was a bunch of information that he had that made what I saw made sense, and there was a bunch of information I had that made what he saw make sense. Now, even though a lot of the cast and crew have worked on Sleep No More or worked at the McKittrick, their stuff tends to be linear. So there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end. And if you don't catch the father poisoning the daughter, Munchausen by proxy, in the beginning, you have no idea why, the climax happens the way it does. And so that's one thing that can, FOMO is real both as an emotion and when, hey, this doesn't make any narrative sense because I totally missed this one piece of information.
Into the physical.
I do, since we're apparently getting catastrophic failure on the streams, is we're gonna call it. I'm gonna give one chance here for the last, because I promised Steve and Lisa, you guys have something coming up soon. What an ignominious end too. It's like we were getting into the good stuff.
Sales very soon. The next tour is going to Montreal, and it's going to be May 31st to June 2nd of.
Right. All right.
If anybody heard that,
yeah, you know what? It is actually running for the moment.
It's still a secret.
Yeah,
Nobody
it's
knows.
go through. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it did. We'll find out for the chat room in a couple minutes. Okay, I'm gonna slap it back over to me. Hey, to everybody who's been watching all along, I know I've got a few diehards there. Bill Chang, you've been sticking with us. So hey, Bill, and there was we're gonna figure it out. It's probably not gonna be OBS. So, but we've got another one of these in less than a week. There's an engagement next Tuesday, which I need to do, but next Monday we're gonna try this all over again, possibly with some different software, and we're going to go ahead and start off Everything Else, which is our brand new. Catherine's like, Discord? Man, it's not. The Skype is not the problem. Just so you know, it's not Skype that is the problem here. There's other things that are the problem here. Everything Else, which is going to be our pop culture hour, where we look beyond the borders of immersive and start talking about all the other things that we are obsessed with. And it just so happens there's going to be some crossover here because this weekend is D23. So on Monday at 7:00, we're pulling together an all-star team. Brian Resler, who's our San Francisco coordinator, Ricky Briganti of Pseudonym Productions, myself and Anthony, if he's got the time, we're going to come together and talk about D23, which is Disney's big fan expo, where they announce what's going on in the parks and with the movies and with Disney Plus. This is going to be some watershed stuff for pop culture, and there'll be plenty for us to talk about. So thank you for your patience. I hope that you guys and Michael Henderson says that New Room Escape Tour heard, so the word did get out, David and Lisa, and I just wish the stream was stable enough the entire time so we could have this for everybody. All right, until next time, we'll see you on the streams.